I've spent the past 3 years in college locker rooms having conversations with young men about the importance of respecting women.
How would you feel?
What did
You don't have an answer either?
I don't. What did Coach Saban say to you guys after you guys walked out?
Well, stay in the locker room, stay in the locker room.
Stays in the locker room. What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. It's between us and coach.
Shock to all y'all, sis.
I mean, it's not a shock. We just hate to lose. I mean, it's hard to have total success against a team with a good defense.
You know, I'm skeptical she was doing it to help women.
I was recently invited to a major university, and as I was being debriefed on the way in, they were telling me what was going on specific to their locker room.
All right, this ought to be good. Male athletes are degenerate assholes.
I was informed that there was one player who had punched his baby mama,
His baby mama is on the team?
that there were 4 other players that were facing rape allegations with 4 separate women.
The police were after them? Or the school? How are they in the locker room if they're in jail?
That there was another 2 players who had filmed and watched one of the rapes of an unconscious girl.
If you have film, shouldn't you be taking that evidence to the police?
And knowing all of this, one of the head coaches came in the day after the election and he started the chant, "We can grab women by the pussy because this is America."
Here I'm calling bullshit. I'm open to evidence, but my suspicion, and what would make more sense linguistically and in context, is the coach started a chant that went, "We can grab them by the pussy because this is America." The context would almost certainly be the next team they were playing, because it makes zero sense for a coach to be trash-talking by chanting about grabbing random women by the pussy. That means the coach would be trash-talking women.
Well, that is not the America that I know, and the truth is that sexual assault is but a symptom of the problem. The problem is the mindset of how these young men are being programmed to think about, to talk about, and to treat women.
Well, your premise is off on what these men think or feel about women. It's insanity to me that women think this is reasonable. Men are overwhelmingly taught and trained by women from ages 0 to 22. The amount of time men spend with women and talking about how we treat women is far, 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 far higher than with men, other than with our peers, where we barely ever talk about women specifically as being women, and rarely still in a sexual way, until we're at least 13 or 14 years old. Even then, 99% of what most guys know comes from women and how they act and treat those young men.
Protect her is not implying that women are weak and that we can't protect ourselves, so we need men to come and help protect us. Protect her is an invitation for all of humanity to better prioritize the women and girls.
Better prioritize from what? To what? How can you get better prioritization of girls and women? They get the most spending, by far, out of any group you can name. The spending on women and women's funding dwarfs that of men, and certainly that of the whole LGBTQ, or any racial group, or just any group you can think of. How can we prioritize women more than being number one? Further, why on earth should we do such a thing?
Now, what's interesting is that some schools call me because, at the end of the day, they care about what's going on in their locker rooms.
Yeah, fucking sick young men beating and raping women who just haven't been prioritized. You what?
But before I ever started in locker rooms, I worked in girl empowerment for a decade. When I was 19 years old, I founded a nonprofit called I Am That Girl. We're basically a badass version of Girl Scouts for college girls.
Well, that seems like a much-needed service. So I did a scroll, and it seems to me like there's dozens upon dozens of Empower Young Women groups. I did a search for programs for young men to empower young men, and it appears there's one. And it's not really an empowerment program, more as it is a mentorship program, which is started in the 90s. And it doesn't seem all that impressive, because I ran, because I figured, well, hey, maybe men have more mentorship groups or something, because they probably struggle the most from single-family households, because the majority are women teaching young men. But no, it seems like there's dozens and dozens and dozens of mentorship groups for young women, including corporate-specific ones being run by companies. So,
And it wasn't until 3 years ago that Yogi Roth and Trent Dilfer called me, and they asked me to come and give a talk to the top 18 high school quarterbacks for a TV show called Elite 11. What I didn't realize was that when it aired on ESPN, a week later, Everything with Ray Rice would come out. And suddenly I was that girl in the locker room having tough love conversations with men about the importance of respecting women.
well, I guess not respecting men is fine then, because it turns out his wife first hit him, then spat in his face, then hit him again, then charged him before he hit her once and knocked her out. Oh, and you work for ESPN. You're one of the scumbag vultures who Ray Rice's wife correctly pointed out that want to destroy them and profit.
She wrote the following. I woke up this morning feeling like I had a horrible nightmare, feeling like I'm mourning the death of my closest friend, but to have to accept the fact that its reality is a nightmare in itself. No one knows the pain that the media and unwanted options from the public has caused my family. To make us relive a moment in our lives that we regret every day is a horrible thing. To take something away from the man I love that he has worked his ass off for all his life just to gain ratings is horrific. This is our life. What don't you all get? If your intentions were to hurt us, embarrass us, make us feel alone, take all happiness away, you've succeeded on so many levels. Just know we will continue to grow and show the world what real love is. Raven Nation, we love you.
Like I said, there were some schools who were hiring me because they had an incident going on in their locker rooms, and there were other schools who were just legitimately concerned. And I had one head coach call me, and he said he was worried because he had a daughter, and the way in which these young men were talking about women that was so disrespectful.
You really aren't going to catch on to that this is because, for men, we have to earn each other's respect, right? There's no men walking up to other men saying, you have to respect me because I'm a man. We earn the respect of other men. It isn't handed down to us like women seem to want it handed to them, and this causes young men to be incredibly confused. The worst possible thing you could do is introduce more women to the situation and have them blame the men. This is completely retarded.
So sure enough, I fly out and I'm sitting there, and halfway through my talk, we're sitting in a circle in the locker room, you can imagine, the only girl, and halfway through my talk, one of the guys raises his hand and he says, you know, I get it, it's important to respect chicks, but it's cool to fuck chicks.
That's been programmed into him by women, you know.
And you can imagine, coach is like, you gotta be kidding me. He's like sitting there shaking his head, looking down at the ground. And so I look up at this kid and I said, okay, says who?
Women say it's cool to fuck chicks, especially to athletes.
Now it's this long pause, and immediately he's, looking at his boys left and right who are equally mortified, staring down at the ground like, you gotta be kidding me. We're for sure running sprints now.
Yeah, that's how this works. A young man expresses his sexuality, he's questioned by women, in a locker room no less, then punished, and as are all the other young men around him. You're fucking insane if you think this is going to gain women respect. Like, insane.
And so after a minute of awkward silence goes by, I look up and I said, here's the thing, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I'm just saying you made a really opinionated statement. You said it's cool to fuck girls. I'm just saying, says who?
And you're painting this particular guy into a corner for no reason, thinking you are looking intelligent, when all you're doing is further cementing into him and his friends that women might not deserve respect because They are there to be condescending and not actually impart information. There's nothing gained here. They will go back to messages from other women every day that it's cool to fuck women.
And finally, he looks up at me and he says, I don't know. And I said, yeah, that's the problem, you see, is that you're on autopilot and you've been programmed to think that way. That you were handed a script that someone gave you with a definition of cool that's not even yours, and you have the audacity to pawn it off as though you're being original.
Indeed, when this is what is being taught to him by women. He's also being told to respect women without being shown how women are earning and can earn respect. Further, he's being shown that fatherhood isn't necessary, but since he's an athlete, women are constantly after him and usually not by very forthright means. When the confusion arises, he is turning more away to his peers and to things like porn because then he doesn't have to deal with the hypocrisy.
Mother, father, preacher, teacher, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I am simply inviting you to be brave enough to author your own life, to come up with your own definitions, and to think for yourself.
This dude is thinking for himself. You can tell he's thinking for himself because he doesn't conform to the group around him and openly talked about something without thinking about consequences. He may not be the brightest light, but the rest of them are the ones conforming to you being in the locker room and probably just passing time until you're gone.
He came up to me after the talk and gave me a really awkward hug. And he said, thank you. And I looked at him and I said, for what? And he said, no one has ever asked me to think for myself. I want to thank you for the invitation.
That's stunning, isn't it? Surrounded by mostly female teachers his whole life, and there's almost no one telling him to think for himself. I bet you won't even see the irony that you now use that story to invite men to prioritize women. That's just stunning.
You see, I was put on the planet to empower women. I was made known of that at a really young age, but it wasn't until I stood in a room full of alpha dudes that I realized that I'd been missing the point, only preaching to half the sky.
I'm starting to think you must live on an alternate planet where men aren't constantly told we have to look after women.
That violence against women is not a women's issue. Violence against women is a human issue, and it requires all of us participating. And the truth is, the majority of these young men feel that they have never been invited to sit at our table.
And they're still not being invited to sit at your table. Going into a guy's locker room and talking to them about violence is like me going into a woman's locker room and talking to them about their periods. These guys will see 100 times as much violence as most any women you will meet, and they will in no way ever be invited to speak of it. They could be dead from violence, and very few would even know.
So we created the first ever protector program that can be integrated into college locker rooms to invite young men to broaden their definition of manhood. Because we believe that in order to protect the dorm rooms, that we have to activate the hearts and the minds of the locker rooms.
So your genius plan is that men have to be told more to protect women, but since you think it's not done enough, your plan is to get the biggest, toughest, and most alpha men to further commit themselves to serving women. Unbelievable.
Now, a few things that I've learned being in the trenches with these guys is, first and foremost, we have to make them aware of their programming. We have to get the most distracted generation in history to pause long enough to be introspective, to ask the hard questions, says who?
Good God, I really don't think you want that. If anything, it would probably serve your cause to continue with the programming. Hell, maybe you actually think it's not beaten into guys to protect women.
We know that they consume 10 hours of media a day. Media that glorifies violence against women, that's inherently disrespectful, that's hypersexualizing and objectifying. We know that they consume 3,000 brand images every day spoon feeding them a definition of manhood that's been hijacked by a cheap clone wearing Ken doll, lacking a moral constitution, self-respect, and authentic confidence.
And at the end of the day, it's irrelevant to men. Young men, unless they're gay men, only care about what attracts the opposite sex. Mass marketing has worked wonders on women since the 1950s, but hasn't worked so well on men, other than as a side to what women want and need. This is part of the confusing signaling of women, but protect us has always been part of that, and always will be.
We know that the majority of these young men learn about sex through porn. So maybe we can stop being so shocked, because they're doing exactly what we as a society are programming them to do, and they're doing it very well.
Yeah, except your notion of what they are being programmed to do is backwards. What's happening is most media messaging everywhere is how awesome women are. You're a fucking idiot if you don't think men don't see that, and the complete opposite for men, especially when it comes to fathers being bumbling fools. You also clearly don't play video games because women, like in real life, are almost universally treated with kid gloves compared to men. In gaming, I've probably killed a few million men in my life, to maybe 100 women, maybe 200. It just shows, though, where you and society put priorities, and young men see this. They see right through it, and the ones who don't regret it and see it later.
So maybe as a society, we can better educate them on sex and healthy relationships. 2, we have to have a conversation about identity. We have to broaden their definition of manhood, because the consensus in the locker room right now is very easy and pretty achievable. It's be as rich as you can, be as famous as you can, and bang as many girls as you can.
Because that's the signals they are getting from the young women around them. Do you live in a vacuum? This would be particular to locker rooms. Why not try and go to a chess club and giving your respect to women talk there?
Now, it was interesting because my husband had a brilliant idea. He said, what we have to do, and my husband is here, he's a 6'9" poster boy of feminism. And his brilliant suggestion was we have to get these young men to stop viewing women just as sexual objects.
The only women they are viewing as only sexual objects are the ones presenting themselves as only sexual objects. Come on, this is not rocket science.
But to remind them that women are human beings too, he said, so honestly, if I were you, I would just pull pictures of their girlfriends and sisters and moms from social media. I put it in your presentation. I pull pictures of all the women that they love, and I put up a slide and it says 1 in 4 girls would be sexually assaulted on a college campus. And of course their eyes glaze over. And they're like, here we go, we're gonna have this conversation. And then I clicked the next slide and I said, but it's different when it's her. And I memorized 10 to 15 names and I said, it's different when it's Sarah, and when it's Lauren, and when it's Jenny. And now these guys are looking at their 16-year-old sister. Half the guys in the room started crying.
And now you've mobilized a bunch of tough guys to hate and distrust men more. Well done, dipshit. Very empowering for women. I'm sure you're using the 1 in 4 will be sexually assaulted stat that includes things like hair pulling.
Number 3, we have to have a conversation about respect. You can't give something that you don't have. We have to imbue these young men with more self-respect so that they're able to treat others with more dignity. What dawned on me was that we are not teaching enough emotional education in school right now. We're certainly not teaching these young men how to create an authentic confidence, so they are sourcing it from exactly where they know how, through performance, through popularity, and through possessions.
And the only reason young men care about performance, popularity, and possessions is for what women it will attract. If women didn't flock to men with money and power who treated them poorly, this would be over long ago.
4th, we have to have real talk with these guys. I have yet to come into a locker room where they use words like consent and bystander.
I've never been anywhere and heard these terms in anything other than as academic language. Academics fail to understand how consent works and seem to attribute bystander to someone who isn't a language police officer or a grammar Nazi.
Those are words that we use, right, in our shiny, star-studded PSAs. I've yet to hear of a guy come in and raise his hand and be like, yeah, there's this really great opportunity for us bystanders to intervene. I've never heard of a guy be like, yo, we were in the middle of hooking up, and I'm not gonna lie, like I paused and I was like, I just wanna make sure that I officially have your consent moving forward.
Funny, I've never heard a woman ever stop midway through hooking up and ask if she has the man's consent before moving forward either. That's a lot of sexually assaulted men I know.
We have to give them real language and real tools for the moments that we're asking them to be brave. We have to work with them and be in conversation with them to offer them language when they see something sketchy, being able to say, yo, we don't do that. Then in the middle of hooking up, to give them language like, yo, I just want to make sure you're cool with us having sex.
Aye. Okay, once again, women are the limiting factor in reproduction. They always have ultimate say. They can scream and the dude will get his face destroyed by the 10 closest guys. Why are we not teaching women to ask for consent? They have all the power in these social relationships.
Because as long as we're talking to them like academic robots, I think we're setting them up to fail.
Then why the fuck are you trying to give them academic tools for situations that are in no way academic? They are not the limiting factor in reproduction. Men barely have control over who they can or cannot date, short of popularity, possessions, and performance.
We're at pandemic levels. This is happening everywhere. Instead, just celebrate the universities who are doing it right so we can inspire others to follow suit. For coaches and educators, please invest in programs like these that are preventative medicine. We cannot continue to triage these symptoms, putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds.
Violent crime is at the lowest level in the history of the world. Sexual assaults as well. Birth rates are dropping rapidly. Abortion is hanging around the same rate. What on earth are you talking about?
For parents out there, you hold all the power in your wallets. Demand that in order for you to pay tuition, the schools have to invest in the safety of both your daughters and your sons.
University campuses are safer now than ever before.
For students out there, ask your administration to invest in these kind of programs. And for student athletes out there, say that you're not going to sign with any university that isn't making prevention a priority.
Don't sign with universities who won't inform you to protect women at all costs. Wow.
For policymakers out there, if you have to have a driver's license to drive a car, why would you not have to take a mandatory sexual assault prevention program in order to attend a college or play a sport?
And here we are. If this moron has her way, in order to take classes with women, men will have to take courses on how to best protect them. Worse, in order to play sports, you will have to take courses on how to protect women. You will need a license as a male in order to play sports or to go to college, and you'd better believe men will be paying for this overhead.
For the National League team owners, would you be so audacious as to sign a protector pledge that says that you won't draft any students who have sexual assault convictions?
And this is just the start. Soon they will require that you have never been accused of sexual assault, and then it's all over. Same thing will happen with employers too. Soon it will be nearly impossible for a male to be able to get a job. The qualifications simply will be too high.
To be a professional athlete is a privilege. It's a real-life superhero in this country. And you literally have the ability to change the entire game with those kind of standards.
No. More than anything, the guys who will have issues with these rules will be poor guys who have been abused, typically from single mother households with limited means and almost no role models. You'll simply be pushing more privileged people into more privileged positions.
Lastly, Protector is a battle cry.
Oh my god.
It's a belief system. It is a cultural identity that is rooted in the inherent respect for women.
Bullshit. Protector is rooted in power and a role forced onto those who can handle it, be they men or women.
And it's easy for us to hear these different talks and to be inspired by them, but the truth is, this kind of audacious shift in culture is going to demand that the warrior, that the gladiator, that the protector in you and in me rises to the occasion to create a new definition of normal, where girls and women and all people are treated with dignity and respect.
Unbelievable. Couldn't even class men and boys in with women and girls. Unbelievable.
Because the truth is that men are not simply the problem when it comes to violence against women. They're also the cure.
Oh god, fuck me. Yeah, the radical new paradigm shift of getting the tough men to beat up the other men. Brilliant, Einstein. Holy shit.
And we've never needed them so much.
It's the safest time in the history of the world.
So for the real men out there, consider this your invitation. Thank you so much.
So we got a formal invitation to protect women from other men. Never in the history of human society has this happened. This TED Talk is completely revolutionary.